Once Emily had closed the door behind her, Pendleton approached me. Watson. Yes? Thank you very much for saving Lady Whiteley today. So you know, then? Indeed. Still, I would ask that you not do anything further that would cause her worry. His expression was so stern that it nearly robbed me of a meaningful reply. She has a tendency to attract danger even at the best of times. There is no guarantee she won't find herself in peril again. Well, Do you disagree? I can't. Not when all you say is true. Dang, even Watson can't deny it. I had been so caught up within the scope of my own shortcomings that I had scarcely stopped to think that my actions might have exposed her to further danger. I felt so pitiful, so frustrated and angry with myself. My flaws dogged me, cackling at me from the periphery of my vision, ever within earshot but ever out of reach. When it comes to matters concerning you, Watson, Lady Whiteley will ignore the potential dangers that might result from her actions. She is a kind spirit, as I'm sure you're aware. Even since she was a young child, she has always thought first of others, heedless of her own pain and sadness. I know. She'll always just say that it's nothing, or that she's fine, even when she isn't. She won't let herself cry even when she's scared or sad. She hasn't changed at all since then. Watson? Have you... Actually, Pendleton, I met Emily once when we were younger. It was only the one time, by chance, and yet these many years later I've never been able to forget that meeting. I desperately hoped to see her again, that I could somehow help her, somehow see her smile. That encounter is what led me to take the path in life I've chosen. And ultimately, I truly was able to see her again. But that's not enough for me anymore. I want to be a man strong enough to protect her, to keep her from harm. But... Watson, you are a kind and considerate young man. However, kindness alone will not be enough to keep her safe. Pendleton's frankness landed like a fist to the belly. You will need the resolve to safeguard her without question, even if it should mean she comes to hate you. Even if doing so means hurting her is unavoidable. And so I ask, are you capable of this? Ugh. I couldn't find the words to reply to him. If you have even the slightest lack of confidence in your ability to do so, I'm of a mind to lock her in the mansion for the time being, for her own safety. My thoughts flashed to the steel-taloned hands of Jack the Ripper, and to the merciless, icy stare of Colonel Morin. It was difficult to imagine that, after being disowned and nearly executed in an alley by the Colonel, Jack the Ripper would ever again hunt us on his behalf. But it was very clear to me that Morin still wanted us dead. The way before us was perilous. We had merely switched one deadly foe for another. I knew full well what I ought to answer if her safety was my primary concern. You're a far more dependable person than I, Pendleton. If that is what it will take to keep her safe, I'm fine with it. I see. Very well, then. In that case, we ought to carry her out while she's sleeping. Are you all right with that? Yes. Once Emily was safely within the carriage, it departed the Baker Street office. I watched as it grew smaller, then passed entirely out of sight in the fog. But even when it had left my vision, I continued to gaze out at the road where it had been. Over and over, I tried to reassure myself that this was the right thing to do, that this was the best course for her. Emily, Yet deep within my heart, I couldn't bring myself to accept it as the truth.
Because you realize it's a daft idea, Watson. Watson and Pendleton, honestly. My poor girl's gotta, like, escape now. The first and last of a most terrible act. Most terrible. Well, after a deep night's sleep, I had awoken feeling refreshed. Under ordinary circumstances, that would have been sufficient to put me in good spirits. But these were not ordinary circumstances, and cheer had no place in my heart today. Though I had fallen asleep in Holmes and Watson's Baker Street office, I had awoken the next morning in my own bed, whereupon Pendleton had informed me that I would not be going to school until further notice. This is the third day I've been stuck here like this. Ever since the day I had gone out to visit Watson, I had effectively been made a prisoner of my own mansion. Pendleton had even gone so far as to lock the door of my room. I had protested, of course, tried to get him to understand my position, but to little avail. I understand that he's only doing this because he wishes to keep me from danger. I know that.
Watson has accepted this arrangement as well. He admitted to me himself that he lacks the confidence to say with certainty that he can keep you safe as he is now.
I had thought I would finally be able to be by his side. Watson. Whispering his name there alone in my room only served to underscore my feeling of isolation.
It'll be all right now. I'm right here. We're closer now.
The arms that had embraced me, the hands that drew me close, the gentle fingers that had wiped away my tears. Thoughts of dear Watson, who had taken me in his arms as I trembled with fear, caused a lump to form in my throat. After saying all that to me, why would he now turn away? I wished that I could see him now, to ask him why he had said what he did to Pendleton.
Excuse me, my lady.
At that moment, a knock came on my door and Pendleton entered.
I thought you might like some tea.
Thank you. My eyes happened to fall on the ring on my finger that Her Majesty had bequeathed upon me. This ring is no simple adornment. It is proof of Her Majesty's trust in me.
My lady, I can't help but feel that you've begun to lose sight of your position of late.
My position?
Yes. You're the current head of the Whiteley family. Which means that one day, if all goes well, you will no doubt receive a surfeit of promising marriage proposals and find among them a worthy husband. As the head of House Whiteley, that is what's expected of you.
That's enough of that. I will be the one to decide who I shall marry.
Even so, I cannot in good conscience leave you in Watson's hands. Not as he is now.
At the mention of Watson's name, my quickly mounting argument ground to a full halt. Why must you bring him up?
Much as it grieves me to say it, he is simply too kind. He lacks the resolve and action to match his feelings.
But he will someday. Perhaps he simply hasn't become the man he wants to be yet. I believe in him, that he'll find his way, that he'll stand up again through his own strength.
Is it that you truly believe, or that you simply wish to?
Of course I believe it! Now come along and bring me the paper, Pendleton. I had likely come across to him as though my bluster was half meant to convince myself, rather than prove the groundedness of my position, but I did not wish for Pendleton to catch wind of my sense of unease.
I brought it with your tea. Here it is.
He placed the morning's newspaper on the table. Thank you.
My lady, I entreat you with the utmost sincerity to behave yourself for the time being. Now, if you will excuse me.
Pendleton gave a curt nod and left the room. It's at times like these that I need to return to my roots. I took a single sip of my tea, drawing in a deep breath. I'm one of Her Majesty's detectives. I need to sit back and think on these matters. I slowly took the paper in hand, the smell of its pulp and ink mingling in their familiar duet. A fox hunt hosted by Her Majesty will be held in Richmond Park tomorrow at midday? Ah, that's the thing Jack told us about Colonel Morin. A fox hunt in Richmond Park? Wait! That's it! Meanwhile, at Holmes and Watson's office on Baker Street.
Was this the event Jack the Ripper was alluding to? I looked down at the morning paper. Richmond Park. He loves hunting. Fox hunting to be more particular. If it'd allow him to offer up the ultimate prize to his master, the colonel would cut off any number of subordinates. Why would he tell us that?
Oh, hello, Holmes Sr.
I would imagine he found the thought of being indebted to you most unpalatable.
Keep forgetting to do Watson's voice.
Mr. Holmes gave his thoughts on the reasoning behind the Jack's divulging of clues.
Not only did you best him in combat, you also saved his life. That must have been a difficult reality for him to accept.
It's not that I was trying to save him, though. I just acted without thinking. Even when Colonel Morin had pointed his gun at Jack, the killer had made no attempt to escape. When I saw in his face that he had relinquished all hope, a flash of anger took hold, and before I could second-guess my decision, I acted.
You're a very forthright lad, honest to a fault where your own feelings are concerned, but you do have an unfortunate habit of acting without thinking.
I'm sorry. If you hadn't arrived just when you did, I hate to think what might have happened.
Still, it was precisely because you are the way you are that Jack the Ripper elected to leave your most curious clue. You've suspected it yourself, haven't you, Junior?
Huh? Sherlock Holmes looked not at me, but past me, and reflexively I turned to see what he saw.
The boy's back! I've missed you! Your absence was keenly felt on my part. Oh, it's so good to have you back.
I'm in complete agreement, as much as it loathes me to admit it. Holmes! But I thought you were still in the custody of Scotland Yard!
Not exactly. He has remained under their watch, of course, but he has also been aiding the investigation. And all this time, he's been concerned with how you were faring.
That's quite enough, father. Holmes interjected before his father could say any more. Still, I'm glad to see you're doing all right. I was worried you might still be feeling out of sorts after being tricked like that. Out of sorts? Me? As if that would ever happen. If I had the time to mope about, I'd be better served using it to locate those responsible for tricking me. Holmes sounded as full of confidence as ever, with determination in his eyes to match. It looks like your time in police custody hasn't changed you at all. I should hope not. You, on the other hand, seem to have lost a bit of your characteristic jollity. A pity. That was always one of your standout qualities, too. You're simply imagining things. I heard from my father that there's to be a fox hunt hosted by Her Majesty is to be held in Richmond Park. That park is a vast tract of land, with large wooded areas perfect for concealment. Even if someone were to shoot at another person, the noise would simply be taken for another discharge of a hunting rifle. It could take hours before it was realized a crime had taken place. Then the ultimate prize that Jack the Ripper mentioned would be...
In this case, the only person I can think of befitting such an appellation would be the host, Her Majesty the Queen.
The Queen?
Scotland Yard officers will be handling security for the event, but without having any idea where such an attack might come from, it will be difficult to prevent it. On top of that, Colonel Morin was once an exceptionally skilled sniper. He injured his dominant hand when he and I fought, and so may not possess quite the skill he once did, but the man is a genuine veteran. He'll choose a place where he can hit his mark without fail.
Would it not be possible to just have the event called off entirely?
I very much doubt it. The testimony of Jack the Ripper, while compelling enough to us, wouldn't be reason enough to call off an event hosted by Her Majesty.
No. However, there's nothing stopping us from investigating the park ourselves and revealing the truth. We may also be able to forewarn Her Majesty that she may be in danger. Holmes rubbed his chin, the unmistakable look of a tactician now set across his features. Is this all because of that ring Her Majesty gave you? Even had I never been given this ring, I'd be inclined to venture upon the very same course. Rather than simply doing what a detective ought to, I prefer to do what I believe to be right. Neither you nor I needs express permission to do that. Huh. Try though I might, I could never bright myself to be as bold as Holmes, or to cut to the heart of things as he so often did. Watching him deliberate with himself, cross-referencing facts and evidence as though it were the most natural thing in the world, made the distance between he and I readily apparent.
Regardless, I'll be returning to Scotland Yard. I've been asked to provide my input on tomorrow's security arrangements, you see.
You certainly are popular with the police.
I'll take that as a compliment. Whatever the two of you choose to do, be sure you choose it without regrets. Especially you, William.
I will. Mr. Holmes exited the office with a gallant flutter of his coat, leaving only his cryptic words in his wake. Incidentally, Watson, I apologize for having worried you. Holmes's apology came so suddenly and with such uncouched sincerity that I doubted at first I had heard him right. What brought that on, Holmes? Are you feeling well? And, by the by, are you still under suspicion for the murder? Indications are that it will take a bit longer before all suspicions surrounding me have been fully cleared, but seeing for themselves the seriousness with which I've approached the case, the police haven't been keeping me under observation as intently as before. But never mind me. Why do you look so disconsolate? What? I do not! Feeling increasingly as though even looking at Holmes granted him the power to read my thoughts, I instinctively turned my face away. Honestly, you've been a poor liar for as long as we've known one another. I can see right through you. Do you honestly think you'll be able to take her back looking like such a sad sack? What? What are you getting at, Holmes? You were listening before, weren't you? Richmond Park covers a vast area, and the number of officers on hand to guard it will necessarily be limited. There's no way that one of Her Majesty's own detectives, and to be clear here I speak of Emily, wouldn't take a keen interest in this case.
He actually used her first name. Do you know how long it took to pull that name from your mouth and your own roots, sir? And you're just casually dropping it in conversation with Watson? Dang.
No!
Oh, apparently PC Outcast also saying no. Probably for a different reason, though. Holmes spoke... man, I'm so thrown off.
Holmes spoke as though all he said was the basis of common sense, and without thinking, I interrupted him. I couldn't allow her to be exposed to further danger. That's why I don't want Emily to be hurt anymore. I don't want her to live in fear. I wanted her to be where her safety would be all but guaranteed, no matter how far apart it kept us. And are you satisfied with that? You don't understand. You have no idea how I feel. It had been a long while since Holmes's words had last riled me up so greatly. I could feel my anger burn hot beneath my skin, both at Holmes's words and that he had so cleanly hit the mark. I am not some genius like you are. I can't solve cases on my own. I don't have sudden fits of brilliant inspiration like you do. I'm just an ordinary bloke with no standout skills who can't even keep the lady he cares for most safe. I knew in my heart that I was venting my frustrations on the wrong person. But I could no longer stop myself, and the words kept tumbling out. So pent up had been my frustration that before I knew it, I was clenching my fists, fingernails digging into my palm. I've never seen you in the throes of such melancholy before. I know full well that nothing I'm saying will change anything. Perhaps not, but there is one point on which I feel it imperative to correct you. On what? Listen well, Watson. Holmes turned to me and looked at me straight on. No matter how certain you may be that you're some workaday, ordinary bloke, in my valuation, you're anything but. Your presence is vital to me, and I want you to be fully aware of that. Holmes, you're my assistant, and as such I cannot abide you having such a negative image of yourself. After all that, you still unflinchingly put me in my place as your assistant. It almost seems that you're having a laugh at my expense. Of all my acquaintances, the only ones able to speak so directly to me are you and Miss Whiteley. Still, I can excuse it in her to a degree. She's unique, after all, and views things through a unique framework wholly her own. That's not true at all, Holmes. She's not some rarefied specimen of humanity. She's just an ordinary girl. But she feels others' pain as though it were her own. That's why I couldn't simply turn my back on her. I'll be the first to admit that, at times, she notices details that escape others' notice, and times when she exceeds expectations. You acknowledge that, and still believe her to be an ordinary girl. I do. But even as I believe that, I also hold her to be, in my eyes, the most precious girl in the world. If not for her, I wouldn't be standing here right now. Nor would I have ended up so desperate to help someone. I see now the importance she holds for you. Although I had long suspected she was your first love.
Oh God, you knew? So Watson knew, and you knew, and this means stuff for your root, feels and things? Gosh.
What? How did you... Keen observation is one of the fundamentals of being a detective, Watson. You know this. Ordinarily, you can start a conversation with nearly anyone. Never met a stranger, so to speak. And yet, at Her Majesty's party, when you spoke with Emily, it took you a moment before doing so. Based on that, it was simple deduction that she must be someone important to you. You noticed that?
Man, right from the party, he recognized her. Sheesh.
Of course. That party should have, by all rights, been the first time either of you had met, so I couldn't help but wonder at your behavior. Just how many years have we known one another? I notice these sorts of things. Oh. I felt more than a little flustered that Holmes seemed able to see right through me. You put in a commendable degree of effort in all you do, even though others may never be aware of it. For instance, the detail of the notes you make for each case, or the way you carefully file letters and documents to memorize a case's every particular. You even went so far as to secretly learn to play the piano, although your covered-up attempts at learning to handle a firearm didn't seem to meet with quite the same success. I had my suspicions that, in spite of my best attempts to keep my efforts private, he was still aware of what I was doing, but it felt rather embarrassing for him to prove it in so blunt a manner. I really can't keep even a single secret from you, can I? I think I'm going to need a bit of time alone to think. Do as you wish. Thanks. Newspaper in hand, I exited the room, leaving Holmes behind. He watched in silence as I left. I found myself appreciating anew how wondrous a thing it was to have friends. But even this joy was muted, for over it a cloud hung still. I wonder if Emily has already seen the morning paper. I'm certain she'd have a few speculations of her own about this fox hunt. Is that all because you have Her Majesty's ring? Even without this ring, my actions would not have changed. More important even than doing what a good detective ought to do, is to do what I personally believe to be right. To do so requires no allowance requested, no permission given. I'm sure Miss Whiteley feels the same way too. If that's so, then I need to do what I personally believe to be right as well.
Now you're getting it. Early the following morning, the day of Her Majesty's fox hunt in Richmond Park had arrived. Today is the day. Pressing my face against the window, I stared out into the distance from my bedroom. I could only assume there was some underlying reason for Pendleton to have left the newspaper there for me. I wonder if Watson has already taken notice. I need to go. I need to warn Her Majesty that she's in terrible danger. Unable to calm my anxieties, I gazed out the window once more, distracted. Upon first reading the front page, I had been so determined to escape that I had knotted together a makeshift rope of bedsheets. But after all that had happened, I found myself unable to muster the courage to act on my plan of escape. Pendleton had forbidden me from going outside. I could not even leave the mansion to attend school. I couldn't deny that I had caused him no shortage of worry already, or that I had nearly been killed by Jack the Ripper. I looked at Her Majesty's ring on my finger. If I fail to warn Her Majesty of this plot, something terrible may happen to her. And more than that, I would be betraying her trust. What to do? I can't even ask Pendleton for advice this time. If only you were here, Watson. If only I could talk to you, even for a moment. I imagined Watson's face, thought about what he might be doing, but in doing so, I managed only to renew the ache of my loneliness. But as I turned my eyes again to gaze out my window, I heard the sound of a pebble hitting it. What was that? Puzzled at the sound, I looked toward the ground. Romeo, Romeo, where art thou, Romeo?
Hey! Emily!
There I saw standing a familiar figure. The very same as had been ever present in my thoughts throughout my ordeal. I could only just hear him as he called out, but it was clear he was trying to get my attention. I hurriedly unlatched the window, leaning out of it to shout at him as discreetly as one can shout. Aww. Sweet boy. Watson! You didn't seriously infiltrate my estate, did you? I could scarcely believe he had snuck into the garden without arousing the attention of the mansion's servants. Escaping the attention of the easygoing maids was one thing, but even Pendleton?
Emily! Calm down!
Below, he looked up at me, his arms spread wide. I knew full well the trouble I would find myself in were one of the servants to discover us here like this. But if we're seen... Besides, I'm a whole floor above you. This could be dangerous.
Don't worry! I'll catch you!
Watson, wait! I've got an idea. Oh, come on. Just leap out the window, Princess Bride style. He'll catch you. I held up the knotted bedsheet I had planned on using as a rope, feeling it would be a safer option, not to mention quieter than leaping out the window. He gave me a bitter smile, but then spread his arms once more.
If you insist, but if anything happens, I'll catch you.
All right. I slowly began my descent, moving my hands from knot to knot along the length of my rope as my feet pushed away from the side of the edifice. I had snuck out of the mansion this way in the past, before I had enrolled at the academy, so I expected I would be fine. Huh? However, my feet were made slippery by the morning dew. My hands, unprepared for the sudden tug as my feet tried to find their footing, released their grasp, and I fell. Ah! Time seemed to slow as I hurtled toward the ground. You should have just done the leap of faith, girl. I closed my eyes tightly, expecting to feel my body jarred by a painful impact. But instead, I felt the strength of Watson's arms as I was caught and drawn close to his chest.
Are you all right, Emily?
Watson? As our eyes met, I found him looking at me with great concern.
I did tell you to calm down, but I wasn't expecting you to be in quite such a hurry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's fine, really. You aren't hurt, are you?
He continued to look me over. I wasn't certain what to do, only that my heart was beginning to beat faster. I'm quite all right.
Good, good. I apologize for asking that of you, though. Huh.
With a sigh of relief, Watson gently set me upright back on the ground. I'm so glad to see you again. There's so much I want to talk with you about, and a matter for which we must make haste.
I'm glad to see you as well. I'm sure we're setting ourselves up for a stern lecturing from Pendleton, but it's one more thing we can face together.
I'm willing to accept the risk. After all, I can't simply stand idle when Her Majesty may be in danger.
So you noticed, then. I figured you would. After all, you're...
Whatever Watson was about to say, the words never passed his lips and he fell silent. I felt his grip on my hand tighten ever so slightly. What? What is it, Watson?
Nothing you need concern yourself with. At any rate, we ought to make ourselves scarce before Pendleton realizes you're gone. Follow me!
All right! His hand grasped mine firmly as we made our escape. His hands are covered in bruises. What happened since I saw him last? Even so, I could feel his warmth in my fingers and through my palm, and with that warmth, the gloom that had hung about my heart as I had gazed at my bedroom window dispersed as though it had never been.
Still, given the circumstances, I'm glad to have arrived before you decided to make a grand escape alone.
He smiled softly at me. His smile. I feel like I've seen it before. Yes, a long time ago.
Emily? What is it?
Nothing.
Really? Well, if you say so. At any rate, Holmes is waiting for us, so let's hurry.
Holmes?
I'll tell you what's happening on the way. Let's go!
All right! Click. Click. Anytime.
This way, Emily!
I'm coming! Eventually, we reached our destination. I saw there a single chestnut-colored horse waiting.
Good boy. Sorry I kept you waiting, but we're ready to be off now.
Oh no. At Watson's touch, the horse snorted once and calmly lowered his head. Watson, is he yours?
Yes, this is my horse, Platinum Rain.
Platinum Rain? I had no idea you had a horse of your own. He seemed quite attached to Watson.
Our paths first crossed in the school stables, but as I looked after him, he grew rather attached to me, and I've obtained the Academy's permission to ride him whenever and wherever I please.
He certainly does seem to be a very well-mannered horse. It was just the sort of thing I'd expect of Watson, widely loved by animals as he is. The sheen of the horse's coat was clear evidence of Watson's impeccable care.
He might well be the fastest horse in London, and we have need of that speed today. He put his foot into the saddle stirrup and swung his other leg
Oh my goodness, I was still Watson. So sorry. I don't know if I'm Watson or Emily anymore. Bleh. He put his foot into the saddle stirrup and swung his other leg over the steed's broad back. There we go.
Grab hold, Emily!
He extended his hand toward me. All right! I reached for Watson's hand. With that gesture, I found myself recalling once more the boy who aided me in freeing that deer from the trap when I was a child. Back then, there was something in his gaze that calmed me in spite of the situation. It was the very same sensation I felt now gazing at Watson's face. Watson, when you and I were children, might we have...
What was that again?
I opened my mouth in reply, but stopped before voicing a response because I want to drag this out as much as painfully possible. This is neither the time nor place to discuss the past. We need to hurry to Richmond Park. I grabbed his hand and he pulled me up into the saddle with him. Never mind it for now. Let's hurry.